He was the mohawked assassin who turned knockouts into primetime entertainment. Chuck Liddell wasn't just a UFC fighter, he was the UFC during its rise to global fame. With ice in his veins and cinder blocks for fists, he dominated the light heavyweight division, flattening legends and packing arenas like a rock star. But legends don't always get fairy tale endings. Chuck stayed too long, and now, at 55 years old, his life is a quiet tragedy. His speech is slow. His body is broken. The vibrant fan base that once cheered him now watches as a shadow of the Iceman walks through public appearances. This is the heartbreaking downfall of Chuck Liddell, how fame turned to silence, victories to defeats, and a hero of the octagon became a living warning of why some fighters never truly retire until the damage forces them to. Long before the spotlight, Chuck Liddell was a wild kid from Santa Barbara, California. Born December 17, 1969, he grew up in a chaotic household with a single mother. His father disappeared early, leaving Chuck, the eldest of four, to take on the role of protector. Money and stability were absent. Survival was the lesson. By age 12, Chuck began training in Kazan karate, a strict style demanding discipline. A skill he didn't possess naturally, but he craved combat. In high school, he excelled at football and wrestling, while earning a reputation for throwing hands both inside and outside the classroom. At Cal Poly, he wrestled at the NCAA Division I level and earned a degree in accounting. But the real education came in California gyms and bars, where bare-knuckle brawls were common. After college, he transitioned to kickboxing and eventually joined John Hackelman's famed Pit Gym in San Luis Obispo. That's where the Iceman was born. Not just a nickname, but a persona. Cold before fights, colder after, Chuck's demeanor set him apart. In 1998, the UFC came calling. Chuck debuted at UFC 17, grinding out a decision over Noah Hernandez. From there, he built momentum, not with hype, but with sheer brutality. The sport was raw. No uniforms, no sponsorships, just cages, blood, and chaos. And in that chaos, Chuck thrived. He brought a striking style that defied conventional wisdom. Hands low, chin exposed, but his timing lethal. He baited opponents, then delivered counterhooks that ended fights instantly. The Iceman didn't just win, he punctuated his victories with undeniable force. By the early 2000s, the UFC was struggling financially and banned in several states. It needed a star. Chuck Liddell became that star, smashing through legends like Vitor Belfort and Renato Babalu Sobral with surgical precision. The 2004 grudge match against Tito Ortiz became one of UFC's most watched events. The Mohawk, the icy stare, the DMX walkout, it all became iconic. Chuck wasn't just fighting, he was building a brand fans couldn't resist. His style invited danger, and he delivered explosive results with frightening efficiency. After losing to Rampage Jackson in Pride FC in 2003, Chuck returned to UFC as a redemption story. UFC 52 saw him knock out Randy Couture to claim the light heavyweight title. Over the next few years, he defended the belt by knocking out Jeremy Horn, Babalu Sobral, and Tito Ortiz, each victory more electrifying than the last. Chuck's rise coincided with the UFC's emergence into mainstream culture. He appeared on Entourage, Late Night with Conan O'Brien, and in commercials. But as the fame grew, the weight of the spotlight began to crack the Iceman's armor. At his peak, Chuck ruled like a tyrant, headlining major pay-per-views and becoming the blueprint for MMA marketing. But behind the scenes, his training became looser. Sparring grew rougher. Whispers of partying too hard emerged. Chuck himself admitted to lapses in discipline, though at the time he still had the power, the chin, and the belt. Until he didn't. In 2007, Chuck faced Quinton "Rampage" Jackson in a long-awaited rematch. The result was devastating. Rampage didn't just beat him, he flatlined him. The image of Chuck unconscious on the canvas shocked the MMA world. The invincible Iceman had melted. Yet, Chuck didn't walk away. Months later, he returned to face Keith Jardine, only to lose a split decision. No dramatic knockout, just confusion. A once unstoppable machine being outpointed and dismantled. The nightmare continued at UFC 88 in 2008 against Rashad Evans. For 2 rounds, Chuck stalked his opponent, searching for the big right hand. Then came the overhand right, a perfectly timed strike that dropped him instantly. Eyes blank, limbs stiff, Chuck fell like a puppet with its strings cut. Fans gasped in silence. The myth of the Iceman had shattered. Even after repeated defeats, Chuck returned to face Mauricio "Shogun" Rua at UFC 97. He started strong but was caught flush, collapsing into the cage in another haunting image of his body and legacy being broken. Dana White publicly intervened, urging him to retire. But Chuck refused. "Fighters fight. That's what I do," he said. For him, quitting meant losing his identity. Chuck's loyalty to the UFC had earned him respect and a rare lifeline, a potential executive role with salary and prestige. Publicly, he accepted, appearing at events in suits and smiles. Privately, though, he remained in fight mode. Training, sparring, and fan questions about a comeback made him feel alive. In 2010, Chuck's final UFC fight came against Rich Franklin at UFC 115. Initially sharp, he looked capable of a comeback, but a short right hook from Franklin sent him to the canvas. Another stiff fall, another knockout, another empty stare. Dana White had finally seen enough. Chuck's competitive career was over. His name was retired, his image gradually removed from promotions. In 2018, Chuck returned in a public catastrophe under Golden Boy MMA, facing Tito Ortiz in the trilogy fight. At 48, nearly a decade removed from fighting, his timing was slow, his chin gone. From the first bell, Chuck looked robotic and stiff. Midway through round 1, a clean right hand folded him. No applause, no shock, just sadness. The fight drew widespread criticism. Fighters, journalists, and fans called it irresponsible. Even Tito Ortiz expressed concern, stating, "I hope he's okay." This wasn't a comeback. It was an obituary. Golden Boy MMA folded shortly after, erasing any hope of salvaging Chuck's competitive legacy. Post-fighting, Chuck Liddell's life has been a struggle to find purpose. He attempted brief reality TV appearances and UFC retrospectives, but aging, slower speech, and diminished mobility were apparent. Financially, he faced difficulties. Reports suggested failed business ventures and property disputes, though Chuck never publicly confirmed them. Personal life also suffered. His 2020 divorce from Heidi Northcott, with whom he had 2 children, left him without a steady personal foundation. Chuck tried to stay in the public eye with social media posts, shadowboxing in empty rooms, promoting charity events, but the presence of his former team, coaches, or gym partners was gone. He sacrificed mind, body, and legacy for MMA, and the sport now had no real place for him. Chuck Liddell will always be a legend. He was there when MMA was in the shadows, before massive sponsorships or ESPN coverage. He helped build the UFC with his fists, knockouts, and unshakable persona. For older fans, he remains the knockout king, the man who flattened Tito Ortiz, crumpled Randy Couture, and walked out to DMX with dead eyes and focus. For younger fans, he is the cautionary tale, the fighter who didn't know when to quit, whose final fights were tragedies rather than celebrations. Unlike Georges St. Pierre, Daniel Cormier, or Khabib Nurmagomedov, Chuck never had a ceremonial retirement, no packed arena, no formal glove drop. His end came through silence, Dana White's orders, knockout after knockout, and eventually, fans who stopped watching. Today, Chuck Liddell lives quietly, far from the cage. The Iceman name still holds power, but it's tied to pain. He trusted his chin too long, returned when he shouldn't have, and refused to let go of fighting because it was all he had. Should he have walked away earlier? Or is his story one of dedication and passion gone too far? Comment below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the lives of sports legends.